Fallon had what she thought was pretty severe social phobia, but when she had her demons cast out in Jesus' name, her anxiety and fears left with them.
So you were the first person that I ever referred from my professional counseling office that I used to have to go and do deliverance and exorcism. I want to welcome Fallon House to the channel. This is a dear friend of mine, and you had demons?
I did. I definitely had demons.
Yeah. So what was life like before you had demons? What were you struggling with? Remember when you and I were doing some counseling at my old office when I was a licensed professional counselor?
Yeah. So I struggled with what I thought was just anxiety, like a lot of anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
Multiple times a week. It was affecting my marriage. It was affecting like pretty much everything in my life, but I suffered really silently. Like I didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
I talked about it to Seth because he was the closest person to me.
Your husband?
Yeah, my husband, and he has
watch his video
yeah,
too.
watch
It's awesome.
his video. But yeah, I'd so isolated myself. Like the voices in my head had so isolated me that I just had him to talk to. So before I came to you, you're like the second person that I ever told anything like that. So. But yeah, a lot of anxiety.
So my precious sister here had a pretty severe case of agoraphobia, social phobia, and what happened during deliverance?
Oh goodness. So like the actual deliverance day experience.
Yeah.
So they took me through the interview, all the renouncing and everything. And I just remember Mike in his rolly chair that he loves so much. He like rolled up and he went to confront, like divide soul and spirit in front. And I mean, he did not have to
divide soul and spirit.
Yeah, divide soul and spirit, and he did not have to push very hard. It almost felt like immediately, almost like I was like underwater for a second. Whenever it started separating from myself.
Yeah. Did you know it was there before that point?
I had an idea that
or they
maybe
were there?
Yeah, I had an idea that like something was wrong. But I thought I just had really bad anxiety. I didn't think I actually had like demons, you know. But I went because I figured, you know, I can't feel worse if I go and just see what's there.
Right, yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't know till you know. So I went, but I mean, it immediately something came up, and I'm a pretty reserved like person. I'm an introvert.
Yeah, you're pretty.
I try to be pretty respectful, but I mean, it came up laughing in Mike's face and like being really like taunting and, you know, completely out of my character.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's immediately I was like, oh my gosh.
Were you fully co-conscious during this? You're kind of in the background knowing that it's happening, or how was it for you?
Yeah. So I mean, after that moment where I felt I was kind of underwater, I knew that was not me. Like my vision got kind of blurry, but I was definitely aware through my session, which I'm so glad. Before I went in, I was like, please, if something's there, just let me black out. I don't want to know. But I'm really glad that I was aware, because I could recognize, like, whenever it came up, the impression that it had on my emotions and everything. I could recognize, I could look back in my life and be like, oh, when I was feeling that, when I was like saying that to Seth, that wasn't me. That was like the
What did that feel like to recognize and be aware of that?
Oh, I mean, that moment changed my entire life. Like just that recognition of that was not me. All of like the struggles that I had dealt with, like the problems in me and Seth's relationship, it really took a lot of like the guilt and shame off of me, because I was like, I was in torment whenever that was happening. Like that was a demon. That was not me. Like that wasn't part of my personality.
That is very common for people to have that moment when they realize, oh my goodness, a lot of this crap is not even me.
Yes.
And then it left, did it? How did you know it left?
Well,
or they left, or what happened?
Yeah, so,
I don't think I was in that session, was I?
No, so that was my first session, and I actually had a few follow-up sessions, but that first one just really completely changed everything for me. But at the end, whenever Mike and Hope was in there and they were commanding it to leave, I felt that it was there, and then I felt the release and just like the peace that came over me afterwards. And Mike asked me like immediately after everything was over, he's like, well, how do you feel? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so quiet. It is so quiet.
What do you mean by that quiet?
So before I went through deliverance, in my daily life, like outside, I probably looked pretty composed, but inside it was just like swirling thoughts, chaotic thoughts, all kinds of just racing thoughts, a lot of busyness. And I just thought that was normal. Like that's how it always lived. I thought that this is how everyone's mind was.
Yeah. So I'm doing counseling with you, and you can't even get to church because you're so social phobic.
Yeah.
A week later, tell them what happened.
So yeah, Mike had me share my testimony on stage, and yeah, I was able to get up in front of a group of people and share what happened to me. He reminded me actually recently. It's funny, like time goes on and you forget like certain details of what you used to struggle with, but we live like 45 minutes away, and I used to get up, like I would want to go to church with Seth. I mean, he's been doing ministry for years, and I've always struggled with like going and just being with him at church
and enjoying it if you do get there.
Yeah, and enjoying it if I actually did get there, and not being like, oh my gosh, I need to leave right now. But I would drive all the way from Seymour to Maryville, and I would sit in the parking lot, and I would turn around and go all the way back home. Like I would, yeah. And
it's just unbearable anxiety?
Yeah, and there were some days where I would be getting ready, and as I'm getting ready, I would have an anxiety attack. I'm like, I can't do it. So, but I mean, people didn't know that's what I was dealing with. They just, I don't know what they thought, but that was part of
I was in the audience that day, and I didn't know that you were going to go up on stage, and you walked up there. I just started bawling. I was like, oh my goodness, God is so good.
Yeah.
So what else would you tell people about anxiety and the possibility that it may be influenced by literal demons?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you don't know until you know. So if you're even considering deliverance, please just do it. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to anyone that's regretted going through deliverance.
It can't turn out bad and people get worse after?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think you could turn out worse. So, yeah, but it's definitely completely changed my life. I mean, I'm like stepping into leading deliverances now. So I went from not being able to be at church at all, barely, to like leading deliverances. So
Fallon is casting demons out of people, and people are getting the same kind of freedom that she got. Yes.
So good.
Thank you for doing this interview.
Yeah.
I think it's going to influence a lot of people who are struggling with social phobia and just any kind of overwhelming anxiety. So bless you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
When you've tried everything to get rid of your social phobias and anxieties and fears and nothing's working, you may want to try deliverance. You may have literal demons that are influencing you, causing all these problems.